Hello and welcome to the commentary box. It is almost the new year. This is New Year's Eve, of course. Hope you've had a wonderful Christmas. Me and Jake certainly have. And as always, we're joined by me, Sam Turner, and I've already mentioned Jake. How are you, Jake?
I'm very good. I'm excited to be doing another podcast. Quite a lot here on our Christmas schedule, but we're making the time up, of course.
Exactly. And you don't know this, but we're both on treadmills working off our Christmas dinners as we are recording this. Now we're not, sadly. But yes, we're going to be talking a bit about Salah today, later on in the show, and the penalty incident. We put a lot of polls on our Twitter page about this. And we'll also be talking a bit about the crazy Premier League results that have been going on over this festive period. There is a lot to talk about on that. But first of all, we're going to talk about Van Dijk. Now, Jake, last time out, I think it was last time out, or the show before our Christmas special, asked me whether Van Dijk was the best centre-back in the world, putting me on the spot a bit, and I said he was. And then Jake promptly tried to basically just prove this by putting a poll on Twitter, but it was actually proven by the public, of course, with 19 votes, that Van Dijk is the best centre-back in the world, apparently, as he got 79% of people said yes, he was, and only 21% said no. So, Jake, I think Van Dijk is the best centre-back in the world, then.
Well, I think only people who are searching for the hashtag VVD are going to be voting yes on that poll. But no, I think quite a few people have voted on it, and people have spoken, and I can see why. Personally, I'm not torn. I'm still undecided whether I feel like I need to see a bit more of him. I need to see him finish this season with Liverpool and see what he manages and see how vital he is amongst their success. For example, like if Liverpool win the league this year and they also win the Champions League, and they have very good cup runs, and there's so many clean sheets involved with that, you could definitely say, I'd probably say that he is up. Like, I'm trying to think now of players at this very moment in time who are performing at such a high level. And I think of the classic like Ramos and PK. And then you've got to think about, well, Real Madrid aren't doing very well at all this season. So you've got Ramos sort of doesn't really count in that because he's not playing as well. PK, yes, he's a good player. He's been consistent at a high level. But is he the best in the world right now? Probably not. The only contenders that when I was thinking about it, Sam, was I was looking at Italian football, and you look at Juventus. They've won something like 53 out of 57 possible points this season so far, obviously being top of the league, an incredible stat. And I think Chiellini, I think is a big shout, as well as the likes of sort of Bonucci. I don't know if Barzagli still plays as regularly. I think they tend to go with Chiellini and Bonucci, but like those players there would be probably the contenders at the moment. I'd say I don't think, because this is a hard question, because if then I said to myself, who would I rather have a centre-back, Chiellini or Virgil van Dijk? And I just even look at Virgil van Dijk, and he's just this big, rock-solid defender. And that, I just think, do you want that? Or it's hard. Like, I still need to see a bit more from him. But then you could say, well, look, Chiellini's not done very well with Italy in recent years, not qualified for a couple of things. I know Holland haven't, but Van Dijk's obviously a bit younger, playing for Southampton back then. I'd probably say, I don't know, I'm still unsure, but you look at the record that Liverpool have with Van Dijk after they bring it in, and you can see like the increase in clean sheet, the decrease in the amount of goals per game they're conceding. He contributes in terms of corners as well. He's very, very good in the air, aerially. Corners are their main man. They look for it. They don't really have too many sort of big figures in the Liverpool side. But you were talking about this earlier, and you were saying sort of off air that you've got to look at what I'm about to say. You can apply to sort of anyone in any club. But I was thinking, if you didn't have the likes of, say, Alisson and, Alexander-Arnold and Robertson in defence, would Van Dijk record, and would he be held as such a good and significant player? And then you said, well, let's say Salah didn't have the likes of sort of Firmino and Mane and Milner and Keita all around them. Would Salah be the top goal scorer last year? It's hard. You've got to look at the players around them and see how things are working. It's difficult. It's really difficult to say. I feel like it's very hard when you go, someone is the best in the world. You have to be very, very certain when you say that. And at the moment, I'm not quite, but I'm definitely leaning towards it. I've just got to see a bit more. But as you said from the poll, the people have spoken.
Yes.
And they have agreed with you, Sam, and I can certainly see why. And actually, just the thing then, is Virgil van Dijk the best centre-back in the Premier League? Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he is.
So I would agree. Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, I think it is really hard to judge whether a player is the best in the world. I mean, as you said, I think he is definitely the best Premier League centre-back. But even then, if you look at stats, if we bring in stats into this, because some people love stats, some people hate them, but let's just have a look at the stats. With tackles in the Premier League, Van Dijk finds himself 136th with only 19 tackles made. So if you think about that, you could say he's not a great defender because he doesn't make many tackles. And even on clearances, he only finds himself in 13th on 101 clearances. And then even lower with clearances off the line. And actually, if you look at all these kind of stats together, the best centre-back in the Premier League, you could say, would be Sol Bamba, the Cardiff defender. Exactly. So it's hard to measure defenders because, of course, Sol Bamba is going to be making more tackles, more clearances, and more goal line clearances because they're going to have more threats on their goal, basically. So, of course, he's going to have to make more clearances and tackles because they're put in the situation more as a Cardiff player, whereas Liverpool, Van Dijk's not put in that situation, so he just has to stay be concentrated, like when games going on, to make those challenges less often, but make them more vitally, if that makes any sense. So, and though his stats might be worse than a lot of players, it's because he's playing in a team that doesn't really need him at most of the game. And that's a bit like goalkeepers as well. So when you look at, say, who the best player in the world is, it normally is a striker or a midfielder. I think normally because it's something to do with the fact that you can measure the success of a midfielder or an attacker through goals and assists, whereas with defenders you can't. And I know that's going slightly off topic in determining who is the best player in the world, but it still applies to who's the best defender in the world because you could say Sol Bamba is the best defender in the world because he's making the most tackles and the most kind of clearances, but that's because he's in a team that needs him. Whereas if you look at Van Dijk, you could say he's the best defender in the world because he's so commanding, etc., etc. But he's not doing a lot really, if that makes any sense. It's you have to take things into perspective. But all the same, I'm not a big fan of looking at stats all the time. And in this situation, I wouldn't use stats. The only player, if we're mentioning players that might be better than Van Dijk, the only player I can think of as well is Diego Godin, the Atletico centre back. But even then, I think I would still rather go for Van Dijk slightly, or I think I would actually rather go for Godin actually because he's been there, done that. But if I'm picking the best all-round defender, I think Van Dijk gets it for me because he's got the passing ability, he's got the height, he's got the heading ability, he's got the command of the area. He just seems to have it, and he's still young, so that's why I would say he's the best defender in the world.
I can see what you mean, and I can agree to an extent. The only thing I don't agree is just say the best. I can 100% Virgil van Dijk the best player in the Premier League, and I haven't even actually defender. I've not even stated that yet, so that's some improvement made towards him. But I do really like him. I feel like he's very athletic as well. He's very strong, and he can run a lot. And you sometimes see centre backs that can be quite slow, maybe not quick off the mark. As powerful as he is. So it's interesting, but I think he's definitely the best in the Premier League. And I think it's an interesting debate to have. And I think for me, like I've said before, to sort of confirm how I feel, I'm going to have to wait until the end of the season to see how he does with Liverpool. But then, like, do you remember when Lovren piped up on social media and things, and he talked about, I'm the best player in the world or something, defender, because he took his team to a Champions League final as well as a World Cup final, and he argued, that's the best. And you sort of look at stats again a little bit. You look at Raphael Varane. I think last year they won the league and the Champions League and the World Cup. And you could say, well, Varane, the best centre back in the world. Look what he's done for the clubs he's been at. So it's hard. Like, I think you're right in this instance. We can't just look at stats because obviously Sol Bamba, the beast from Cardiff. Hopefully, he's not putting that many tackles against Gillingham on Saturday, but he would be the best in the league. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think it's fair, but yeah, for me, I just want to see how far he can take them and how much influence he has, because obviously Varane had not much influence in, couldn't really play much, but in winning all those trophies, I don't know if he had huge impact in. But I feel like Van Dijk would be a very crucial player and would have a very crucial role in Liverpool's success.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. It really just depends on the way you look at it and you measure the best defender. But what we can all agree on is that he's highly influential in this Liverpool side. He's one of the missing pieces of the jigsaw, as people put it, for this Liverpool side, and he's doing tremendously well at the moment. And only time will tell whether he is one of the greatest and one of the best defenders in the world.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think we'll just have to see how it goes. But we could talk about Van Dijk a lot, and I know a lot of people would want us to, but we will move on to other Premier League matters. And this is kind of just a general talk about the Premier League, because it has been going crazy the last few weeks, basically since Christmas started, with some ridiculous results. Not as in ridiculous as in they shouldn't be happening, but just some really amazing results happening. Just to mention a few: Leicester beating Chelsea and Man City, Crystal Palace beating Manchester City, Wolves beating Tottenham. And I'm just going to ask you, Jake, which one of these crazy results has surprised you the most?
Now, I would say probably Palace beating City, because I feel like this was the most unexpected result to happen, because Leicester under immense pressure at the moment, especially with their manager, his job could be lost. There's a lot of pressure going on there. However, they know they've got to perform well, and they did against two top teams. And they got very good results. So they've sort of done themselves well, and you can see where, the motivation and it all came from. And likewise with Wolves beating Tottenham, Wolves have done very, very well against top teams in the league. And they've actually, it feels like they play better against the big teams, and they're more suited with their style of player to be playing against top teams in the Premier League. So you can sort of see it behind there as well. But then you look at Crystal Palace and City. City are obviously done amazing this season so far, until they come up against Crystal Palace at home. And Palace aren't really under immense pressure. They're doing all right in the league so far. And it just came out of nowhere. You see Townsend's goal that got them sort of kick-started their momentum to win the game. And it was just I'd probably say, yeah, that's goal of the season already. Like, I can't see a better goal being shown unless someone scores a really good bicycle kick. But like, it just sort of literally came out of nowhere. And like, I watched the game, and it wasn't like Palace parked the bus as soon as they got a goal and they only just went on. They were going for more all the time. City got a few back, but they didn't have like load of chances, cleared offline, hit the bar, things like that. It was a very a fairly even game. And, Palace did amazing to deserve that victory. I think for me that one's down. About you, Sam, which of those catch your eye?
Well, automatically, yeah, it's got to be the Crystal Palace game, because as you it's Man City haven't been challenged like that before, and they've lost the game, and it's crazy to think about it at their own ground, and for it to be Crystal Palace is just crazy. So I think that's got to be the most surprising result. But then I think even more surprisingly, almost, is them losing again to Leicester. Because, like, okay, everyone has a bad game, and if you remember back to last season, I think Crystal Palace had the chance to beat Man City at home that time. But I think Milinkovic missed a penalty, which means they only drew. Or I think even Man City ended up winning it in the end. But so every team has a day off. But for them to lose 2 on the trot, it's just crazy kind of football going on. So I'd say the Leicester game is just a tiny bit more surprising, because you wouldn't expect the City side and Guardiola to let them lose 2 on the bounce and kind of let the title slip away.
Yeah, no, I think I can see why you think that, because, like you said, every team has an off game here and there. They lose to a team they shouldn't have, or they don't quite get the result and they're a bit unlucky. But then to lose again, that's big. Obviously, I know City, Leicester, we talked about sort of the pressure and things like that, but I can see why you said that one. There's a lot of, it's the thing with the Premier League. You get results every now and again that just amaze you, and it's not just the Premier League; it's all around football. For example, Gillingham are sitting not too far off the relegation zone. Sadly, we beat at home Portsmouth, who've been top of the league for most of the season so far, and that literally came out of nowhere. We didn't even have our big players, our best players playing, and we were in some poor form already, and then we just go bang and just go beat Pompey. So I don't know whether it's a lack of concentration and maybe not a lack of respect, but City players, their mentality is going to be different going into the sort of Crystal Palace and Leicester games than it is going to be going into like a derby against United or a game against Liverpool. So it's really interesting, and it is, I think, more interesting in why it happens, and even more so why people don't really know some of the time why it happens, and why we have these discussions now. So where we're not really 100% sure, we're just sort of talking, giving our opinions and experience on it. But no, that's absolutely crazy stuff.
It is. And it's all of it has kind of meant that currently the Premier League top 4 is looking a lot more open at the moment, because of course now Liverpool are 7 points clear at the top of the table from Manchester City, and Tottenham, who were looking like they might mount a title challenge, have now kind of fallen away as well after their loss to Wolves. And now they are 9-point adrift. And of course, Chelsea, who also lost to Leicester, are sitting in 4th, and their title challenge is looking even more bleak. So how things can change over Christmas. I mean, as you were saying, you kind of aren't sure how and why this happens, and it happens every year, doesn't it? This kind of Christmassy period throws up some strange results, and we can't just blame it on too many mince pies or too much Christmas dinner or going out on New Year's Eve or something like that, because Premier League players don't do that, really. So I think the only thing it could be down to is there's such loads of fixtures in the space of a small amount of time, and players maybe aren't recovering as much. Maybe players switch off a tiny bit at Christmas because it is Christmas. So it just kind of throws up these weird results. But also, they're going into even more busier period in January with like Champions League coming up, with FA Cup coming up, with and maybe Carling Cup fixtures a few over Christmas as well. It just piles up, and it's just kind of players want to get a good run going now, and it kind of creates some weird kind of mental attitudes in teams. So I think that's part of the reason it's kind of thrown up results like this. I mean, what do you think about the title race now after this Christmas period is almost coming to an end? So what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, I was just literally about to argue the same thing. I think we can definitely narrow it down to 3 and be quite confident it's going to be between Tottenham, City and Liverpool. I think we're getting close to ruling out Tottenham, just based on a little bit of inconsistency here and there. it's really tough to call with Liverpool and City because I have not ruled City out at all. Like, I can easily see them winning the league still and sort of coming back from this drought of victories in the league. So I don't know who they've got next and like sort of how big these games will be. But I think for City, this next game will be absolutely huge, and they're going to have to win that to sort of show people we're still in it. But I even think even if City loses again and Liverpool win again, and that gap gets bigger, I can still see this City working their magic and finding a way back in. I think when City play Liverpool, we're going to see a huge game, and it's going to show us a lot on sort of who's going to win that one. And it's really difficult, as you said. Obviously, you've got like European games coming up. Players going to be thinking about that, maybe not thinking about the league so much. Looking at who they've got, how they're going to have to perform, change of tactics, maybe flying away to a different country to play against them. So it's going to be different. It's going to be interesting. If I was to call it, I'm still going to say City because I just feel with that City squad, it's just so good, and there's quite a bit of depth, and I feel like even though Mane, Salah and Firmino are incredible and all of them at the top, let's say one of them gets injured for a while, are we going to see, obviously I know the other ones provide a lot with goals, but I feel they do that together, they work together. With a team normally, you've got players who work together, and it tends to be the main man. For example, let's say the Kane who scored the goals for Tottenham, and you've got other players around who work together, but they're more about assisting. With Liverpool, they all work together at the top and all share their goals quite evenly, but I feel like without one, can the others interlink so well? Because as a three, that's how they work so well, as a three.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I feel like we've seen inconsistencies from Liverpool over the years, and obviously I don't think Liverpool ever won a Premier League title, have they?
No, I don't think they've won a Premier League. Of course, they've won the old First Division, but I don't think they've won the modern Premier League at all. And I mean, they were close under Brendan Rodgers that season. Hate to mention it, but of course, the Gerrard slip. I mean, I think at this point in that campaign, they were pretty far away. I think they were 6 points clear with Suarez and like Sterling up front and Sturridge. So, of course, anything can happen. But I just think there is a difference between this last season Liverpool and the season under Brendan Rodgers. Because I think, as we mentioned before, I know I'm going to bring Van Dijk up again. They've got a solid defence. I feel like them as a unit, they are a lot more in tune. Because with the Liverpool of the past, even last season, you always felt they could score goals no matter what. With Salah, Firmino, Mane, Coutinho a bit in the last season, of course, but you always felt they would concede as well. You thought, okay, they're going to let a few in, and that was definitely the case under Brendan, and it's kind of went on into some of Jurgen Klopp's kind of Liverpool, even last season. But I think as we're feeling this season, you're thinking, okay, they're going to outscore any team, but I also don't think they're going to concede many. And that kind of mentality and that look out at Liverpool at the moment makes me kind of disagree with you there. I think Liverpool will go on and be able to kind of hold on to this top spot and win the title. Because it's now, I don't know who said it, but one of the Liverpool players was saying basically they're relishing being the hunted rather than the hunter. Because now Manchester City have to chase them, unlike them having to chase Manchester City last season. So I reckon Liverpool can win the title this season, and it's in their hands. They have their own destiny, and I think they're more likely to than any other Liverpool side of the past would have been in this situation.
I agree. They've got definitely the best chance out of any Liverpool side in previous years, and you can see there's a big difference in sort of consistency and quality of players that they've got. But I feel like with City, we never ever expected them to lose 2 games in a row, and especially to those teams. Like, it just literally came out of nowhere. And I feel like we could see the same with Liverpool. I feel like, although they are amazing and consistent, we could see mistakes just happening, and then they just sort of bottle it. And I just feel that, I don't know, there's just a feeling inside that makes me feel that the same could happen to them, and City are now going to, like, Pep is not going to have any of it. And he's just going to like focus so much. And I know Klopp has been so unlucky with finals and losing in like every final he's been in with something, or most of them at least. And I don't know. I'm sticking with City at the moment, but I could change. We shall see.
Yeah, well, I'll ask you the same question in 3 months' time and see, because I could be wrong and you could be wrong. We could both be wrong, or you could be right, of course. It's so hard to tell, and I know so many of our debates end up going basically like, oh well, we'll have to see. But in this case, again, we'll have to see. We're not completely experts, of course, but it's all we're going to say is going to be a really exciting kind of period to see whether Liverpool can hold on to this lead, because they haven't been first, I don't think, in a long while. So it's theirs to kind of hold on to.
Yeah.
Anyways, on to our kind of last section of this New Year's Eve podcast. And Jake, if you want to take it away with this one.
Sure. So obviously we saw there was a big, I'm not going to say controversial, but there was a lot of people talking about this anyway, where we talked about Salah. And first I'm just going to sort of run through polls so we get a bit of background information about what we thought and what people said. So we did a tweet the other day, and we said, we think there needs to be a lot of clarity. And we're talking about the incident where Mo Salah was awarded a penalty against Newcastle. I think we were saying it was Kieran Clark who was involved in it. And it was where Salah was sort of running into the box, and there was basically Kieran Clark was, say Mo Salah is running from the right-hand side of the pitch towards the goal. Kieran Clark was sort of going diagonal or sort of straight off the pitch. And on the way, he sort of put his left hand on the left shoulder and sort of pulled him back a bit. And then Salah sort of fell down onto the floor and there was awarded a penalty. So we thought there was a lot of clarity needed, and we did quite a few polls to sort of see what you guys think as well. So the first poll that I did was, I said sort of, was it a dive? And I think for me, I feel like a dive is something with no contact. When the defender hasn't touched the striker, but it's sort of almost that it's unclear from the referee's perspective, and the player's just gone to the ground and completely dived, made it look like they've been taken down. And or was it an exaggeration where there was a bit of contact shown, and then the player had gone down after this? And this was very clear from the video, and all four people who voted did agree with this, where there was an exaggeration of Salah falling to the ground. So then I followed that up and I said, well, if there is any contact in general, do people think that should be a penalty? And there were 4 votes against. 75% of you said that no, there should not be a penalty just because there is contact of any sort. It was a lot of contact or not. And obviously 25% of you, so one person did think so. Obviously, this is opinionated, but I tended to disagree with that. And then the last one I did was, after considering the contact that we all saw in the replays of the Salah incident, and the amount of contact there was, which was, in my opinion anyway, sort of grabbing onto the shoulder and sort of pulling it back slightly, and then looking at the response of Salah after Clark had given contact onto him. Do you think it should be a penalty? And again, 4 of you voted, but this was a 50-50 split. And I find with this, I personally said, no, it should not be a penalty, because just because a player touches you, it doesn't mean that you need to go down. And I think it wasn't a dive. It wasn't awful. We didn't see sort of a disgrace of play or things like that. But then it wasn't... it was more of an exaggeration. There was contact shown there. Was it enough to get him to the ground? I don't personally think so. Some people say it was a very, very soft penalty. I strongly disagree with that. I do not think that you can see a penalty being given for that type of incident in football. I feel like it'd be way too soft to give one, and it shouldn't be. But obviously Clark is being silly. But does that... I know Clark shouldn't have done it, but, we see a lot in the Premier League where sort of players will give it a shoulder barge. Sam, you describe it sort of a match incident where, we see shoulder barges and sort of pulls and tugs here and there, and players just get on with it, unless it's so much that he's pulled him away from the ball massively and he cannot go anymore, and that made him fall to the ground. Well, yes, but then it's difficult because you look at, you then say, well, for it to be a penalty, obviously apart from a handball, if a player fouls another player, if that's a foul, does he have to go to ground? Because obviously we see on the pitch where players will get fouled and they haven't been gone to ground, but they've been pulled back loads. But it seems in the box, a player only goes down if they feel they deserve a penalty, or they're exaggerating to try and get one, or obviously if they're diving. To try and sort of get back on track here, with the Salah incident, personally, I feel, yes, there was contact. No, it wasn't a dive. Yes, there was an exaggeration. But no, it shouldn't have been a penalty.
I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean there. And thank you, everyone, who voted on those polls. And I think we were talking a bit before this, how we were both agreeing that it's not enough for a penalty, really. There is contact, and it's a match incident. And I think we came to the kind of a debate conclusion, and it's trying to explain it here as well, that basically Mo Salah exaggerated a kind of a match incident, and we were basically saying that there's an interesting debate to be had on whether an exaggeration is the same as a dive. Because basically diving, as you said, I think, is basically where there's no foul committed and someone falls over. But what's exaggeration? Is exaggeration when there's contact and someone's exaggerated its effect, or is it a dive an exaggeration? And I think I was saying basically that all diving is exaggeration, but not all exaggeration is diving, if that makes any sense at all. I know it's a bit to get your head around, but I'm of the belief that it was just a match incident, and Salah obviously felt contact. It was enough for him to kind of maybe be a bit off put, but it wasn't enough for him to go down. I think he could, in any normal situation. I think you said it off air again, that in any normal situation, not in the penalty box, what would have happened is Salah would have just kind of shoved him off a bit and just basically like got him off his back a bit. But seeing that it's in the penalty area, he thinks he could get a penalty out of it, and it's not him being unfair, because it's obviously contact and it's obviously affecting him, but it's just that kind of exaggeration, and it depends on how you see exaggerations being in terms of diving or just a way of getting a penalty when you should really have a penalty. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I feel with the incident, I don't think that Salah felt it. I felt a little tug, it's not enough for a penalty and I'm going to go down. Obviously not going to think all that in that split second, but I don't feel like the intention was, I know I haven't been fouled enough, I'm going to ground, I want to win the penalty. I feel as if, when you're in that moment, there's a lot of pressure, you're running into a box, you want to score, you've got a great opportunity, and then a player pulls you back or pulls your shirt, you feel a bit of frustration and you just go to ground, just like, well, for God, like, you can't do that. But then he doesn't realise the effect of it. Obviously, if a player gets wiped out and they get forced to the ground, like, no player falls over unless, if it's a penalty, no player will fall over unless they are forced to, like they've been taken out or shoved or something like that. But with this, Salah's gone to ground after what he feels is a foul, and it's very hard to tell. When he's been pulled back, we don't know how much force was in that pull. It could have pulled him to turn Salah, and he's lost the ball, and he's just sort of just sort of given up ish, and just gone to ground and just thought, look, you can't do that, and he's fallen. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, and I feel like even I'm not even 100% sure of what I'm trying to say, but.
I think I know what you're trying to. I know what you're trying to mean. We can't tell if a penalty's, like, if someone goes down, if it's a penalty, because if someone goes down, it's obviously something's happened to make them go down, but we can't tell whether it is enough for them to go down because, like, we can't tell how much force has been put on him and, like, the mathematics behind him falling or, like, the physics behind him falling because that's impossible to tell. So we're just kind of having to make an assumption by looking at the game and seeing, okay, he's pushed him. My mind tells me that that should be enough to go down, and he's gone down. Okay, that's a penalty. And then with a dive, we're thinking, okay, there's no contact or there's a tiny bit of contact, but okay, that's not enough to go down. And this player obviously is diving. There's kind of that kind of assumption in our minds that makes us make these decisions. And obviously, we can't tell whether something's enough to make someone go down, mathematically speaking, because we don't know everything, if that makes any sense. I think that's what you're trying to get at. Is that right?
Yeah. Just also the way of, like, Salah may feel, and strikers in the Premier League may feel, if someone pulls my shirt or someone tugs my arm, that's a penalty. Yeah. And Salah is not going to be sprinting, get a tug, and he might think, that's the penalty. Any sort of tug or pull is a penalty. He's not just going to stop standing. He's not just going to stand still and just go, ref, that's a pen. Like, he's just going to fall over and then be like, look, that's a penalty. Come on, look, he just shoved me now.
Yeah.
And this could be with different situations as well, but Salah might have been pulled on the shoulder, and that is not enough to make him go to ground. But he's not just going to stand still. He thinks it's a penalty, and he just sort of, I don't know how to describe it, just falling to the ground, but it's not naturally because he's making himself.
Yeah.
But, he's running at a top speed. He's felt a pull. He's like, well, that is a penalty. And he's just sort of, he's not dived, but he's gone to the ground. I don't know. Wait, let me try and think about this, because this is quite... So if someone is pulled or tackled and they're not diving to the ground, they're not falling over, they're just going to the floor, almost as a turn. I don't know, or I might be a bit off there.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not sure. I'm just thinking. As hard as I get you, once again, it's got a heart. I'm still not 100% sure what I'm thinking, but you get the idea. And I think, like, personally, to conclude on my behalf, and obviously Sam agrees with me here as well, we don't think it's a penalty. We do think there is an exaggeration. We do think there needs to be more clarity with those sort of things, and it is so hard to tell. Like, we don't know how much he pulled him, and we don't know the reaction of players. Some players, you can push and shove them. They won't even go to ground or flinch at all. There's some players could just be because they're weaker or what they perceive themselves as what a penalty is. Different referees. It's very, very, very subjective, and it's very hard to narrow down. But we do try our best.
Yeah, we hopefully you have understood what we both mean, because it's a complicated topic to kind of get our thoughts across. So hopefully you have had an idea of what we've been talking about. But yeah, that kind of brings the show to an end. I said this was going to be a New Year's Eve special, and it kind of is. But of course, if you didn't know, on the 10th of January, we'll be celebrating our 1 year anniversary as such. Oh, sorry, not anniversary, birthday from being a podcast. And that podcast will kind of be devoted to the year in football that we've kind of seen as a podcast, and also a year of us doing podcasts. So there'll be some like special maybe quizzes about our podcast and about football this year. So look out for that on the 10th of January. Before we do kind of wrap up the show, while the show was going on and recording it, I put a poll out on Twitter regarding Sol Bamba, if I can just find it, and asking whether he was the best centre-back in the Premier League. Let's have a look. It's just loading, bear with. And the results were as follows. There's obviously some Cardiff fans following us, which I'm not so sure I like, but it was 67% yes, said he is the best centre-back in the world, and 33% of people said no. So I might have to create some fake accounts and put that to no as a Swansea fan. So, but
yes. I think that's an interesting point there, stat-wise. I think some people would agree. Just before we finish as well, a couple of things. One thing to say is obviously we do very serious polls here at the Commentary Box, and we make sure we get the latest of everything and updated. So I did a poll saying what is the best part of your Christmas dinner, and I can't remember what I voted personally. I think what I voted was the winner in the end, and that was actually Pigs in Blankets with 43% victory, with Stuffing in Turkey joint on 29%, and not a single person thought that the potatoes were anywhere near the best thing on that Christmas dinner plate. And the other thing I was going to mention, which actually we got quite a few likes on tweet as well. If you do not know already, we're actually recently, as our 25th follower, and we'll give a shout out to our 25th follower, because, we like to celebrate our achievements here that we make on the Commentary Box. And Roma, the English Twitter page for Roma, has followed us on Twitter. We'd like to say, obviously, thank you very much.
Yes,
a very, very big Twitter page they are, with 385.4 thousand followers. So big shout out to Roma. Go and follow them if you've not already. There's some very fun tweets, but obviously keeping up to date with how they are doing in Serie A.
Yes, exactly. And as a kind of a lover of AS Roma, I would definitely go recommend it. I'm a follower as well, and I do love seeing their tweets about random football teams. They just kind of like to highlight, and especially I like to see how Roma are doing after kind of looking at Roma for the last few years and supporting them. And then lastly, there was another thing on Twitter. I know we're mentioning a lot of Twitters. But of course, we had our Christmas 11s on Twitter, and you had to decide which one would win. And the Griffmas FC managed to get the victory over AS Natale, and it was a pretty resounding victory, with AS Natale only getting 33% of the vote and Griffmas FC 67% of the vote. So well done, Jake.
Thank you.
Well picked, really. I think my team was destined to lose as soon as I put Rocky Santa Claus up front. But yes, I hope you've had a wonderful Christmas, as I said before. Hope you have a wonderful New Year's, and I hope you make some good New Year's resolutions. That's to you as well, Jake. I've certainly enjoyed today's podcast, and I think that just about wraps it up, doesn't it?
I think we're good to go. I think we've got an exciting new year ahead. We might be hearing some different sounds in the new year. Just another little clue for you there. I think any of you have been following up with what's been happening lately. But yeah, we'll see you soon in the new year.
Yeah. So it's a goodbye from me.
Bye from me.
See ya.